Okay, part 2. Energy transfer and the first and second laws of thermodynamics. The first law of thermodynamics tells us that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It is only converted from one form to another. We call that the conservation of energy law. The second law of thermodynamics tells us that during those energy transformations, some or all, but usually some of the energy is converted from more ordered forms to less ordered forms. Or simply that entropy, which is disorder, increases. Someone asked, is entropy and disorder the same thing? Entropy and chaos the same thing? And that is not an easy answer. They're both disorder, but if you get into physics, they are distinctly different. Okay? But we're not doing physics, so I'm not going to be too worried about that. Someone asked if ghosts are manifestations of entropy, and I have no idea. I just don't know. But you could probably look online. Okay. I wanted you to note that matter is also conserved. Matter is not created or destroyed. It is only converted from one form to another. But that is not the same as the first law of thermodynamics. It's similar, but the subject is different. First law of thermodynamics, energy. When we're talking about conservation of matter, not energy. And here's another big difference. Matter doesn't have something that's analogous like the second law. Instead, matter is recycled. Energy is a one-way transfer for the most part. So, I'll do a little more with that at the end. But I've drawn my not-so-great diagram. So here's the sun. And sunlight energy, the sun is the source of biological energy. Someone asked where the sun got their energy, so I found a video and attached it to the or put it in the module, so you can check that out if you want. But the sun is the source of our energy. So, sunlight comes down to the earth, not all of it, of course. And then some of that sunlight is captured by primary producers like plants, photosynthetic protists, and photosynthetic bacteria. We're going to talk about photosynthesis next week, and what we're going to learn is that plants and photosynthetic protists have chloroplast, and that is where photosynthesis occurs in those organisms. Photosynthetic bacteria do not have chloroplast because they do not have membrane-bound organelles. But they do have enfolded membranes, and that is where photosynthesis takes place in them. Okay, so primary producers, okay? And what primary producers do is they convert sunlight energy into chemical potential energy. Remember I said I was going to abbreviate that. In glucose. Oh, I left off part of it. No, it's okay. Primary producers convert sunlight energy into chemical potential energy in glucose. Stop. Okay, this is by photosynthesis. All right? So that's what they do. In fact, without them, life would cease to exist. Because this is where everything starts. Now, for energy transfer, let's say the bunny comes along. The bunny eats some of the primary producer. Yes, maybe some grass, maybe some leaves, whatever bunnies eat. The bunny eats some primary producer tissue and converts the chemical potential energy in glucose, this glucose, to chemical potential energy in ATP that can be used by cellular respiration, which I am going to abbreviate CR. Cellular respiration, also called aerobic respiration. Okay, notice, look, over here, I've got an arrow going from the plants to the plants and cellular respiration. Get this, you might be surprised, but the plants don't make that glucose for the bunnies or for you. They make it for themselves. They make it for structural molecules, and they make it for their own energy. So when the plant needs energy, it also takes some of the glucose it's made, breaks it down, and converts the chemical potential energy in glucose to chemical potential energy in ATP. All right, so then, let's say that our bunny is kind of unlucky and some eyeless predator comes along that's maybe deformed or something, and it eats the bunny. Now the bunny's not just like your Easter bunnies and full of carbohydrates, sugars for example. It does have some carbs, but it also has fats and proteins, and what the predator does is it eats the bunny, most of it, and it converts the bunny tissue that's in the carbohydrates, the fats, and the proteins into chemical potential energy and ATP by, you got it, cellular respiration. So plants need oxygen. They produce some by photosynthesis. They're a net producer, so more oxygen than they use, but they use some oxygen for cellular respiration. The bunny uses oxygen for cellular respiration unless it spends a lot of time running from its deformed predator. And the predator also, where am I going? Oh goodness. The predator also uses this, so this energy to convert it to ATP. So, and uses oxygen as well. That's where I was with oxygen. So they're taking these basic ingredients and making ATP. Now they're not creating energy. They're taking energy that was sunlight energy that was converted into chemical potential energy and glucose, and then converting it into chemical potential energy and ATP. So it's all energy conversion. It is not creation of energy. Okay? And then there might be some bits and pieces of the bunny left after the predator's done, and decomposers then would convert the leftover bunny parts to chemical potential energy and ATP. And some of them will be aerobic, and some of them will be anaerobic. And those that are anaerobic will use fermentation instead to get less ATP. We'll talk about that some more. Okay, so basically we see a one-way transfer, no recycling, no circling back of energy. Okay? It goes this way, from more ordered to less ordered as we go. In fact, only some of the tissue ends up as structures or new babies or whatever in these organisms, but when we're looking specifically at the energy, only about 10% of the energy from the plant ends up in bunny tissue, or is used. Only about 10% of the bunny ends up in the predator, so that's 10% of 10%. So actually, it's a lot less beneficial for us, for example, to eat more like a predator than to eat more like a herbivore. Okay, so notice though, so that's a one-way transfer. Now, for the matter, no. These decomposers make it available to the plants so it can cycle. So the matter cycles, but the energy does not. Instead, because of the second law of thermodynamics, heat is produced. So when we talk about the second law of thermodynamics and why I said thermal energy is so important, thermal energy or heat is the manifestation of the second law. That heat, in general, cannot be taken back and put into glucose. There have been some recent discoveries that there might be just a tiny bit of cycling, maybe not all the way back, but talk to a chemistry professor about that, not me, okay? In general, and this is so, most of this energy is converted or lost as heat, and more of it is lost as heat than is actually converted. I think, let me look at my notes. Oh yeah, I will say that the sun gets its energy from nuclear fusion. I did look that up. Okay, so that's the end of the second part of the Quiz 2 lecture.